The wine glass was still spinning when it hit the floor. That's how fast she grabbed her purse. Not a scream. Not even a slammed door. Just the metallic click of her heels on the tile, the keys yanked from the hook, and a voice that cracked the air like frost on a windshield. Don't wait up. She didn't even look at me. Not once. She walked past the photos on the wall, past the framed jigsaw puzzle we built during quarantine, past the dog bowl she swore she'd refill that morning. Just walked out. And all I could do was sit there in a silence so loud it felt like it was chewing through my bones. You ever have one of those moments where your brain refuses to believe what just happened? That was me, sitting on a kitchen floor with a broken wine glass and a lasagna still bubbling in the oven. Because 5 minutes before that, we were arguing about paper towels. I said we were out. She said I never checked the storage closet. I told her I always check the closet. She said I'm always checking her instead. Somewhere in the middle of that nonsense, I made the mistake of saying, I don't get why you're out 4 nights a week now. We barely talk. We barely eat together. You come home smelling like bars. And that's when she said it, like she'd been holding it in for months. I'm not a child. I don't need your permission to go outside. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Permission? I was asking for 5 minutes of honesty. She made it sound like I was keeping her chained to the radiator. I said fine, go. Then added something I didn't expect to mean. But don't come back. She turned around halfway to the door, smiled like she'd just won a game I didn't know we were playing. Said, you won't have to tell me twice. That was 37 hours ago. No calls. No texts. The closet's still empty. The dog keeps sniffing the door. And I've listened to the voicemail she left before walking out at least 20 times now. Want to know what she said? It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a goodbye. It was 4 words. You made this easy. I don't know what hurts more, that she left or that she planned to. Because 10 minutes after she walked out, I found a receipt tucked under the phone charger. It was from a storage unit, rented 2 weeks ago. The receipt said, Unit 117B, reserved under Monica Feldman. I stared at it for a full minute, trying to make sense of it. That's not her name. Not her maiden name. Not her mother's name. Not a name I'd ever heard in our entire relationship. It wasn't even the name of a friend. But the handwriting on the sticky note attached to the receipt was unmistakably hers. Sharp, slightly tilted letters, looping Ys like she always did in high school. She'd left it underneath the phone charger in the hallway, the one we keep near the back door. Like she meant to hide it. Like she didn't want me to see it unless I went looking. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was the security camera. She forgot about the one I installed in the garage last winter, after someone broke into our neighbor's truck. I never told her it had a wide enough angle to catch the driveway, too. She always parked on the street. But last Tuesday night, the night she said she was going to Myra's birthday dinner, she pulled up right to the garage, popped the trunk, and unloaded 3 large plastic bins. Not 1, not 2, 3. I sat there at 2:47 a.m., watching the grainy footage, replaying it like I was reviewing evidence in my own murder trial. She was calm, focused, wearing all black, hair tied up, no makeup. Not a girl's night look. This was mission mode. The next morning, I called the storage facility. I gave them the name, Monica Feldman. Told them I was her brother. They didn't ask for ID, just said the account had been opened 13 days ago and the first payment was in cash. No card on file. No auto pay. All intentional. All planned. She had 1 access log on record. The night before she left me. The guy on the phone sounded half asleep. Probably had no idea he was helping a husband put together the opening scene of his own personal horror film. She just put stuff in? I asked, voice shaking. Yep. 3 totes, I think. Maybe 4. Didn't look too heavy. She said she'd be back in a few days to get the rest. The rest? What rest? That's when I started checking the house. Not the usual stuff. Not drawers or jewelry boxes or closets. I started checking the digital trails. Her phone charger was gone, but she left her old laptop in the bedroom, the one she used during her first graphic design job. She hadn't opened it in months. But when I turned it on, it auto-connected to our Wi-Fi. Notifications started popping up like little confessions. One from an app one didn't recognize. Meant to talk. Apparently, it's one of those private messenger for creatives platforms. Artists use it to share drafts and portfolio stuff. It auto-logins if you're already connected. She was still signed in. And that's when I saw the message that ended whatever hope I had left. Got the unit. He's clueless. We'll tell him next week if he doesn't crack first. It was sent 5 days before she left, to a contact named Sundown. That's all it said. No photo, no real name, just the word Sundown and a picture of a campfire. I haven't eaten in 2 days. Not because I'm starving. I just can't. Every time I pick up a fork, I feel like I'm being watched. Like I'm eating in a life that doesn't belong to me anymore. Like everything she left behind is a trap. A perfectly arranged crime scene designed to make me think she loved me right up until the moment she didn't. And what's worse, she didn't even take her wedding ring. Left it in the bathroom drawer, right beside the extra toothpaste. Like it was just another item she didn't feel like packing. You ever get the feeling someone's building a puzzle behind your back, and you're the only one who doesn't have the box cover? That's what my life feels like now. 100 little clues left exactly where I could find them. Just enough to confuse me, not enough to confront her. I've started to wonder if this isn't a betrayal, but a test. Or worse, a trap. After finding the message to Sundown on that artist messaging app, I knew I couldn't just sit in the house and let my imagination finish what my wife started. So I did something I promised myself I never would. I opened her old phone. The one she left in the junk drawer in the laundry room. She probably thought I wouldn't even remember it existed, but I did. It took 2 tries to guess the passcode. First, I tried my birthday. Nope. Then I tried hers. Also nope. Then it hit me. I tried the exact date she moved out of her college dorm. She told me about it once. Said it was the first day she felt unattached to anyone. That worked. Unlocked in 1 try. There were only 2 apps still signed in. One of them was a calendar app. A private one. Color-coded, full of vague event labels like night run, canvas drop, and long meeting. Most of them were scheduled late at night. Always on the day she said she was catching up with her sister. Except she doesn't have a sister. What really broke me, though, was the one event scheduled weeks before she walked out. It was marked in orange. Grocery test, see if he notices. I clicked it. There was a note attached. Just a single line. Leave almond milk out. Lie about it. Watch reaction. I never even remembered the almond milk. I don't drink that crap. But I do remember asking her why the fridge smelled sour for a couple of days. She told me it was probably the Tupperware. I believed her. Cleaned the fridge out myself. Apologized for making a big deal of it. Turns out, that was the point. She was testing how I'd react. Setting little emotional booby traps. Seeing how far she could push before I pushed back. And when I didn't, she marked the next event in green. Full sweep. Start unpacking at 117B. 117B, the storage unit. I'm starting to feel like this was never a falling apart. It was a demolition. Intentional. Precise. Pre-scheduled. Which brings me back to Sundown. I went through every contact she ever texted on that old phone. Most of them were gone. Deleted. But I found 2 unnamed numbers. One of them had just a single message thread. Same time? 6th and Barton? I'll bring the lenses. That's all it said. But the last message was a photo. It was taken from behind a building. Looked like some kind of warehouse or industrial complex. Fenced lot. Security cameras. And in the bottom corner of the frame, there was a blurry figure sitting on the hood of a car. I zoomed in. The quality was bad, pixelated, but I'd know that car anywhere. It was my uncle's truck. And suddenly, everything got quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before a panic attack. My ears rang. My fingers went cold. I was sitting on the laundry room floor, phone in one hand, staring at a photo that made no sense and too much sense at the same time. Because here's the thing. My Uncle Jude has always had a strange relationship with Mira. Not flirtatious, not obvious, more like an alliance. Whenever Mira and I fought, she'd go to his place. When I was working overtime, she'd say she was getting advice from someone who understood what it's like to be married to a quiet man. I thought she meant his ex-wife, but maybe she meant me. And now there's a photo of his truck parked outside what looks like a warehouse, tied to a message about bringing lenses, and somehow tied to a fake name, a storage unit, and a woman I don't recognize anymore. The pieces are forming a picture I'm scared to see finished. I've been talking out loud to myself more lately. Not in a crazy guy in the woods kind of way. Just whispering things, narrating my thoughts, like if I say them, they'll sound less insane. But every time I do, I sound like someone who lost his wife long before she left. And I'm starting to think that was the plan all along. I had to wait until Sunday. The facility at the edge of town, the one with that faded blue sign and crooked gate, Doesn't allow after-hours access unless you have a special code. Mira, of course, had one. But I didn't. So I showed up early, before the guy at the front even had his coffee. I stood in the parking lot rehearsing my story. I was Monica Feldman's cousin. She asked me to grab a few boxes while she was out of town. I even brought my own padlock and pretended to fumble with it, like I didn't know which unit was hers. But I did. Unit 117B. Far corner. Left side. Just beneath the rusted-out floodlight that buzzed every few seconds like it was trying to stay awake. I expected to find bins, maybe some personal items she didn't want me to see. What I found instead didn't belong to her at all. The unit was cold. Not just from temperature, from how empty it was. Not in the sense of nothing being there, but in the way everything inside had been strategically placed. There were 2 black folding tables pushed against the wall, each one holding identical items: a disposable cell phone, a prepaid Visa card, a roll of duct tape, and a manila folder. That's it. Each table had the same setup, same layout, same eerie precision. Like someone had done this before, maybe more than once. The bins I saw in the security footage were still there. 3 of them, stacked and taped shut. No names, no labels, just a single red marker line slashed across the top of each lid. I opened the first bin slowly, expecting clothes. Instead, I found documents. Dozens of sealed envelopes addressed to names I didn't recognize: Terrence West, Michaela Croft, Roman Hale. Some were typed, some handwritten, all sealed. Every return address was fake, either listed as Office 7C or just scribbled lines. There was no content visible, just envelopes and a faint smell of printer ink. The second bin? Worse. Fake IDs. About 30 of them. All different faces. None were Myra's. But 2 of them looked close enough to her that I felt sick. One ID said she was a real estate agent in Oregon. Another, a gym trainer from Miami. Both names were different, but the birth date was always almost hers, off by 1 digit. And then the third bin. I almost didn't open it. But I did. Inside was a camera, not a digital one. An old-school camcorder, the kind with cassette tapes and a broken viewfinder. Taped to the side was a sticky note in Myra's handwriting. It said, "Don't forget the masks this time. Sundown gets nervous." That name again. Sundown. At this point, my pulse was climbing and my hands were so slick I could barely hold the camera. But I needed to know. I popped the tape out and stuffed it in my jacket. Then I closed everything, exactly the way I found it. Neat. Untouched. Like I was never there. And I walked out of that unit slower than I've ever walked anywhere in my life. Because here's the thing. None of this matched Mira. Not the woman I knew. Not even the version of her I thought I knew after she left me. This wasn't some love affair gone wrong. This wasn't emotional distance or boredom or discontent. This was something else. She was involved in something organized. And I wasn't just her husband. I was a pawn. Back at home, I found an old cassette converter we used years ago for transferring wedding footage. I plugged it into my laptop, slipped the tape in, and hit play. Static at first, then the faint sound of wind. The camera was clearly being held by someone walking, grainy sidewalk, distant street lamps. 2 people came into frame. A man, tall, shaved head, and a woman in a baseball cap pulled low over her eyes. Could have been Mira. I can't say for sure. She never looked directly at the lens. Then the audio picked up something chilling. Male voice. He has no idea. Female voice. He still thinks I'm freelancing. I'll give it another week. The video cut out right after. Just stopped. No ending. No context. Just those 2 lines, and the face I can't stop thinking about. That night, I slept on the couch, not because I had to, but because I couldn't bring myself to go into our room. It smelled like her shampoo. Her side of the bed still had the dent where she curled up in her sleep. Everything about that space felt like a replica of someone who never existed. But now I have something new. A name, a location, and a very specific, very dangerous question. What was she building? And how many people were involved? I didn't sleep after watching the tape. I just sat there in the dark, laptop still humming, that grainy footage playing over and over in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear her voice saying, "He still thinks I'm freelancing." It echoed in this weird, underwater way, like it didn't belong to her, like I wasn't supposed to hear it. But I had, and I was going to find out who the hell he was. It took me most of the next day to figure it out, and even then, it felt like cheating. I posted a blurry screenshot of the guy from the video on a local forum under the Lost and Found category. Said he was a contractor who helped my father a few years ago, and I lost his contact info. I didn't expect anything. But an hour later, someone DM'd me a name, Travis Markey. Said he worked odd jobs out of a warehouse near the train tracks, east side of town, mostly under-the-table stuff. Sounded about right. Sounded dirty. By sunset, I was parked across the street from that warehouse. I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't have a plan. I had a coffee cup I hadn't touched, my fingers tapping nonstop on the steering wheel, and that raw, boiling kind of anger that doesn't burn hot. It just eats. Eats at your spine, your breath, your ability to pretend you're okay. I waited. People came and went. Mostly guys in dusty boots and hoodies. No one looked twice at me. I probably blended in. Tired eyes, weak chin, the kind of man who looks like he lost a fight no one saw. Then, around 6:15, he walked out. Same shaved head. Same walk. Only this time, he was wearing a jacket with Hallstrom Tech printed on the back in faded white letters. That wasn't a construction company. That was a name I hadn't heard in years. Not since Mira interned there. Years ago, my pulse dropped like a stone. I got out of the car. Didn't even know I was moving until I was halfway across the lot. I didn't yell. I didn't rush him. I just walked straight up and said, "Hey, you know Mira?" He turned, smirked, not confused, not caught off guard. He looked at me like we were picking up a conversation we started last week. "You must be the husband." My blood went cold. "You knew I'd come?" "No," he said, "but she said you were curious. Sooner or later." That was the moment I realized I wasn't dealing with some guy she'd met at a bar. This wasn't an affair. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't defensive. He was waiting. "I saw the tape," I told him. "The storage unit. The fake names. What is this?" He nodded slowly, as if checking boxes in his head, then said something I'll never forget. "You weren't supposed to find that yet. You just jumped the timeline." "What does that mean?" But he didn't answer. He just walked around me, real casual, like I was the crazy one standing in a parking lot asking strangers about my ghost of a wife. He paused at his car door and added, almost like a favor, "She liked you, you know. Said you were safe. A good foundation. But this, all of this, is bigger than her now." And then he got in and drove off. Didn't run. Didn't speed. Just drove away like nothing about that conversation was insane. I stood there for a while, trying to stitch together what he'd said. Bigger than her. Timeline. What kind of operation had I stumbled into? When I finally got back in my car, there was a folded piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. No name. Just 5 words written in red marker. "You're already part of it." That was last night. Today, I checked the storage unit again. It was empty. Cleaned out. Like it never existed. Even the security footage from my home system, the one showing her unloading the bins, was corrupted. The clip won't play anymore. Every other file works fine. Just that one is gone. Myra's face gone. Her voice gone. Like someone reached into my life and started editing it in real time. I don't know what I'm part of. I don't know who Sundown really is, or what Hallstrom Tech has to do with my wife, or why a man I've never met knows my name, my timeline, my purpose in this. But I do know this. They're watching me. They want me paranoid. And I think this entire thing was orchestrated to make me question my own grip on reality. Which is working. Because I just got an anonymous email. One sentence. No signature. "If you tell anyone, she disappears for good." I tracked the IP to a motel that doesn't show up on Google Maps unless you already know what you're looking for. One of those places with a flickering neon sign and a name that sounds made up, River Pines Inn. No rivers. No pines. Just 12 sun-bleached doors, a cracked ice machine, and a manager who didn't ask for my name when I handed him a $50 bill. The email that led me there had no body, no signature, just a line of coordinates embedded in the header. I only knew how to pull that off because I used to help Mira organize her freelance clients. We built an invoicing system together. I still remembered her layout preferences. So when I saw the formatting, I recognized the fingerprints. She sent it. Or someone pretending to be her. Either way, I took the bait. Room 9. I stood outside the door for what felt like forever. It was painted shut around the edges, like it hadn't been opened in months. But the lock was loose, turned easily. And when I stepped inside, the air hit me like a wall. Something had died in there. Not literally, no rot, no flies. But the emotional residue was thick. Stale coffee, Old paper. The echo of someone pacing for too long without sleeping. The room was barren except for a desk, a chair, and a small corkboard hanging crooked on the far wall. No bed. No TV. Just stacks of notebooks, spiral-bound, each one numbered. 22 in total. And on the desk, lit only by the weak morning sun bleeding through a broken blind, was a folder. My name was written on the front. Not Eli. Not Elwood. Just him. Inside the folder were 7 printed photographs. All of me. All recent. One of me at the gas station on 5th. One of me leaving my shift. One of me standing in my kitchen, staring at the microwave like a zombie. None of them were taken by me. All of them were taken through glass. Some of them from angles I didn't even realize existed. But the worst one, the one that made me collapse into that cheap plastic motel chair, was the photo of me sleeping. In bed. In our bed. Taken from the hallway. There is no camera in our hallway, which means someone was in the house. Someone got close enough to watch me breathe. I dropped the folder and stared at the corkboard. From across the room, I hadn't noticed the writing. It looked like squiggles, random notes, thumbtacked receipts, and napkin sketches. But once I got close, I saw the pattern. It was a map. Not of places, of timelines. Different versions of Mira. Different haircuts. Different birthdays. Different cities. Every pin led to a note. Mira, Denver. Athena, Phase. 3 months, Mira, Tallahassee. Freya. 6 months, Mira. Raleigh, Violet, aborted. All of them led to a single center pin, marked in bold red ink. Eli, last clean asset. Clean asset. My knees nearly gave out. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually I noticed something wedged behind the corkboard. A notebook, thinner than the others. Handmade. Bound with string. No number. Just the title, burned into the front cover. For when he finds this. The first page was blank. The second page was not. It read, if you're reading this, then the program failed, or you refused to follow the path. Either way, it means I miscalculated. I didn't want to hurt you. I really didn't. But you were safe, and that made you useful. You were never meant to dig, just to witness. You're not the story, Eli. You're the control. But I knew you'd break the cycle eventually. They all do. I flipped through the rest of the pages, heart pounding so loud it hurt. Most of it was fragmented, locations, dates, coded phrases like mirrored entry complete, and symbols I didn't recognize. In the back was a list of names, all under the heading, observed but non-responsive. Most of the names were crossed out, but one wasn't. One name circled in blue ink, with a star drawn beside it. Jude. My uncle. I dropped the notebook. Everything started to spin. Mira hadn't just been working with him. She'd been watching him, too. Like she was waiting to see which one of us would wake up first. When I left the motel, I took one photo with me, the one of me sleeping. The rest I left behind. The notebook, the timelines, the sick breadcrumb trail she wanted me to follow. I drove straight home, pulled the backup drive out of the wall safe behind the dresser, and started scanning every corner of the house. And I found something. In the attic vent, above the guest room, taped to the inside with gray electrical tape, was a small recording device. Still blinking. Still powered. I'm not just being followed. I'm being documented. And this entire marriage may have been one long experiment. I drove to Jude's house the next morning with my hands trembling on the wheel the entire way. Not from fear. From anticipation. From the low, burning, stomach-wringing knowledge that everything I thought I understood about Mira, about my life, had just been set on fire. And the only person left holding the match might be my uncle. He lives out near the quarry. Middle of nowhere. No neighbors. No streetlights. Just a battered metal mailbox and a lopsided gravel driveway that crunches under your tires like something alive. He wasn't surprised to see me. Didn't even flinch when I stepped out of the car without knocking and walked straight through the door like I'd done it 1,000 times before. He was already sitting at the kitchen table, pouring himself coffee like he'd been waiting. You found the notebooks, he said before I could even speak. Not a question, not a greeting, just a confirmation. I froze in the doorway, trying to gauge whether I'd just walked into a trap or something much worse. An explanation I wasn't emotionally equipped to hear. Sit, he added. I'll tell you what she didn't. I sat, and for the next 40 minutes, I didn't say a word. Because what he told me wasn't just shocking. It rewrote everything I thought I knew about Mira, about my role in her life, and about the strange, slow pattern of control I had mistaken for love. It started with a program. Not a government one. Something private. Funded off the books. Operated through front companies and shell firms that changed names every quarter. He called it the mirror architecture. A psychological experiment disguised as behavioral research, but in practice, it was something else entirely. It recruited people like Mira, fractured, adaptable, charming, and above all, unattached. People who could reinvent themselves without losing the thread of control. They were embedded into relationships, long-term ones, with specific kinds of people. People like me. The observers. The constants. The controls. They needed someone pure, as Jude put it. Someone emotionally stable, predictable, and unlikely to challenge inconsistencies. The goal wasn't manipulation for manipulation's sake. It was observation under pressure. Testing how long it would take a person to notice the reality they were living in had been artificially constructed around them. It sounded insane. But then I remembered the almond milk. The paper towel fight. The preloaded calendar reminders. The controlled arguments. The exit plan folder I found weeks ago. None of it had ever been organic. Every argument was scripted. Every reconciliation was measured. And when Mira had screamed that she wasn't a child, that she didn't need permission to leave, that wasn't a moment of frustration. That was her last line. The final push. The breaking point engineered by design. I slammed my hand on the table halfway through Jude's explanation. And you just let it happen? You knew what they were doing to me? He didn't blink. I tried to pull her out after Denver. Said you were too soft. Too decent. That you wouldn't survive the spiral. But they insisted. She insisted. She loved me. I said, my voice cracking like glass under pressure. No. Jude replied quietly. She was trained to act like she did. That's what made it work. That shattered something in me. Not anger. Not grief. Something colder. A clean, sharp detachment that pushed everything Mira had ever said, ever done, into a new category I didn't know existed, weaponized affection. But Jude wasn't finished. He stood up, walked to a locked drawer, and pulled out a manila envelope, thick and bulging with documents. He slid it across the table. This is everything I saved. Locations. Names. Copies of reports. You weren't her first. I didn't want to open it. But I did. The first report was from 2014. A name I didn't recognize. A man. Another subject. Same experiment. He was marked. Non-responsive. Terminated. Involuntary. The word terminated chilled me in a way I wasn't ready to process. But worse than that, I flipped to the final page. A list of active observation targets. One name highlighted in red. Mine. And beside it, in handwriting that was undeniably hers, was a single phrase. Potential anomaly. Reacting outside expected timeline. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about the fact that I broke the pattern. That I started noticing. That I went off script. That I dug into the parts of her life I wasn't supposed to see. And now I'm realizing this entire descent wasn't triggered by a failing marriage. It was triggered because I did what I was never meant to do. I noticed too much. When I left Jude's house, the sun was setting in that kind of soft, cinematic way that makes everything feel final. The envelope sat on the passenger seat like it was breathing. I couldn't bring myself to open it again. Couldn't stand the weight of knowing how deep this went. But I knew I couldn't stop now. Because the notebook in that motel said something else I haven't told you yet. On the last page, written in small, rushed handwriting, was one final message. If you're still reading this, then I didn't erase you in time. The last message Mira left me wasn't in a file, a notebook, or a whisper on a recording. It came in the form of an address, handwritten on the inside flap of the envelope Jude gave me. No explanation, no threat, just coordinates and a note beneath it in Myra's handwriting. If you want a real ending, come alone. The address pointed to a place upstate. A quiet artist residency that looked abandoned from the outside. Ivy swallowing the bricks, windows covered in brown paper, an old wooden fence leaning against itself like it had given up trying to keep anyone out. I didn't pack anything. No camera. No notes. No recorder in my pocket. Just me. And for once, that felt like enough. The front door creaked open before I knocked. She was waiting inside. No disguise. No sunglasses. No persona. Just Mira. Sitting in a sunlit room on a folding chair, her hair tied up, no makeup, barefoot. And for the first time in what felt like years, she didn't look like someone else. She looked tired. Like the version of her I remembered on rainy Sundays, curled up on the couch, half asleep with a book on her chest. I didn't speak. She did. You were never supposed to follow the thread. They don't usually make it this far. I asked her, finally, was any of it real? She hesitated, then nodded. I wasn't meant to care. But I did. I broke the rules before you ever did. That's why I stalled the timeline. Why I left it sloppy. I thought if I could stretch it out, delay the collapse, maybe you'd never see it. She looked down. But you did. Because you always pay attention. I should have hated her. I should have screamed or demanded justice or threatened to burn the whole thing down. But the truth is, I was tired too. Tired of chasing ghosts. Tired of decoding lies. Tired of building meaning from pieces that were never designed to fit together. So I sat down across from her and asked a different question. Are you still in it? She shook her head. Slowly. I burned my access 6 weeks ago. They don't let assets walk, but I walked anyway. I left everything in that motel, not to be found, but to warn you. I knew if you got that far, you'd need some kind of truth, even if it hurt. We sat in silence for a while. Not the kind that demanded filling, the kind that felt like closing a book you'd been reading for years. Not because the ending was perfect, but because it was done. And then she said the last thing I ever heard from her. You were always the only real part. She handed me a small wooden box and walked out the back door. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. Just left, barefoot and quiet, disappearing into the woods like she'd finally let herself be free. Inside the box was a photo. The one she took of us on our 2nd anniversary, before the scripts, before the aliases, before the program. We were standing in front of that old diner in Vermont, holding milkshakes and laughing about something I no longer remember. On the back, in her handwriting, it said, whatever this was, for a moment, it was real. That was 11 months ago. I moved. Changed my name. Not because I was hiding, but because I wanted a clean place to live, not just survive. I took up woodworking. I still work night shifts, but only 3 days a week now. I started talking to my neighbor, Janice. She's a retired science teacher who gives me too many cucumbers from her garden and tells me stories about her husband who passed 5 years ago. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid to be seen. Because they couldn't erase me. Because I kept noticing. Because I made it through something designed to break me and came out intact. Not perfect, not unscarred, but awake.